Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're taking a look at a brand new Shadow Pokemon in the world of Pokemon Go, Shadow Froslass. As of midnight, when I am recording this, a bunch of new Shadow Pokemon have come into the game, and one of them is Shadow Froslass. Now to do this, you have to get a Snorunt from an Ice Grunt, and you have to have it be female. The first two Snorunts I got were male, which is super frustrating, but the third one was female, and it ended up being a rank 27, so an absolutely unbelievable find. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and check out Shadow Froslass in action in the HISUI Cup. Hopping to the first match, picking up the Dream Lead Gastrodon into Pachirisu. You can't win a lead much harder than that. Opponent save switches into Cresselia. I'm going to send in the Shadow Drapion, fire off the Crunch, and Crunch is going to connect, dealing massive damage. Opponent returning fire with the Moonblast. Moonblast is going to land. I'm looking to farm up with the Drapion and fire off the Crunch. The opponent not firing off their energy here, they're just looking to farm up. The Crunch will be shielded. I get the defense drop, and the opponent accidentally plays to a charge attack priority that they do not win. They go down both shields, and at this point, I'm fine with giving up Switch, because I have the most ruthless closer that Go Battle League has ever seen, and that is Shadow Froslass. This thing does unbelievably if you give it a shield advantage or an energy lead. Pachirisu, the whole point of running it is it's absurdly bulky and it can withstand neutral hits. But Shadow Froslass says not today. Avalanche is going to be able to cleanly two-shot the Pachirisu. Pachirisu firing off the Thunder Punch, but with the shield to hide behind, Froslass can continue to farm up. Froslass is going to be firing off the Avalanche. Avalanche is going to pick up the knockout in the back. It's HISUI and Electrode, and HISUI and Electrode is going to be met with a Shadow Avalanche. They're so close to the Wild Charge, but they will not get there. That's a Shadow Froslass sweep, and that's a good game. The great leads continue in the next match, leading Gastrodon into Toxicroak. My opponent save switches into Froslass. Unfortunately, I was slow on the counter switch when I send in Drapion. They win charge attack priority as they go for the Avalanche. I decide to bait with the Aqua Tail since I'm behind on energy, and luckily my opponent does commit the shield. This will allow me to outpace, make it to the Crunch, and force either the final shield or switch advantage. Opponent is going to commit the shield. They throw right away, and I decide to let this go. Once again, I'm looking to set up Shadow Froslass as a sweeper. Shadow Froslass farming up. I do have a very good rank on the Shadow Froslass. As I mentioned, it is the rank 27, so I'm likely to lose charge attack priority. I overfarm, but my opponent with the perfect catch. I'm going for an undercharge here. The undercharge, that looks to be pretty good as well. The undercharge allows me to get a full farm down. If they send back in the Froslass, I'm firing off the Shadow Ball to ensure the knockout. Avalanche probably could have knocked out there, but these are my first games with the Shadow Froslass, so I'm not entirely sure the damage values in the back. It's Obamasnow. Can we get back-to-back sweeps? The Shadow Ball, massive damage. The Obamasnow making the last second charge attack. Can we hang on? No, we cannot. Froslass almost able to get the 1v3, but either way, we take the win. Speaking of Froslass, it's on the lead in the next match, going up against the Gastrodon. I'm going to save switch into my Shadow Drapion. Opponent is going to respond with their own Gastrodon. I fire off the Crunch. That does some pretty nice damage. Opponent is going to be firing off their energy here. Body Slam, is it going to be enough to KO? It is not, but I'm unable to get the Crunch. This will, however, set up a very aggressive farm down for the Gastrodon, which is quite nice, as I can exit this matchup with energy, potentially threaten a shield from my opponent's Froslass, and then my Shadow Froslass is where it wants to be, in a shield advantage. Back in comes the Froslass. I don't decide to throw on perfect timing here, I just throw right away. I want to minimize the amount of farm they get, and now I can bring my own Froslass. They're firing off energy, I'm going to commit the shield. Opponent is running triple Axle. Oh boy. This is really not looking good. I'm firing off the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is going to be shielded up by my opponent. I continue to farm. They're going to be firing off another Triple Axle here. And Triple Axle just continues to boost their attack more and more and more. I go for the Shadow Ball. They catch onto the Toxicroak, and I'm going for another undercharge. This undercharge is going to allow me to get a farm down, but the issue is I don't think I can make it to the move. I switch into the Gastrodon as they fire off their energy here. This should be the Shadow Ball, but now it's my opponent's turn to go for an undercharge, and they're going to get a full farm down. I go for the Avalanche. I lose Charge Attack priority. Is it the Shadow Ball? It is. What a dramatic, fast-paced game, but unfortunately, I am unable to take the win. Moving into the next match, absolute nightmare lead, Gastrodon into the Drifblim. I save switch into Shadow Drapion. Opponent is going to respond with Toxicroak. However, they were a bit slow on the counter switch. And up energy, Shadow Drapion has the ability to generate an advantage that I can take into the endgame. If possible, I would love to get basically into the 1-0 shield situation for my Shadow Froslass. So my opponent has shielded once. I could just take the 2-1 advantage, but I'm going to press my luck and try and go for that 1-0 advantage. And even better, if my opponent Shadow Balls the Gastrodon, then I can potentially just send in the Froslass and go for an aggressive farm down. In comes the Gastrodon, the Mud Slap connects, and from here, I'll be honest, this is looking like perfect farm down range. I'm going to send in the Shadow Froslass. Opponent is going to switch into a Shadow Sneasler, the battle of the shadows. But Froslass, with the energy advantage and the shield advantage, picks up the knockout. And the opponent, all they have left is the Drifblim. The Drifblim can make it to a potential Mystical Fire, but it's just too little too late. The Shadow Froslass with the shield to hide behind does not care about the debuff whatsoever. And the opponent resigns the match. Moving into the next match, great lead, Gastrodon into Impoleon. Opponent save switches into their own Froslass, and I'm going to respond with a Shadow Drapion. One thing this team does struggle with, admittedly, is an opposing Froslass that is up energy. I'm able to send in the Shadow Drapion, but if I'm slow on the counter swap, then that can make things very uncomfortable. Here, I decide to full send, and my opponent calls the bait, so I'm so happy that I chose not to bait. I should be able to make it to 2 crunches, and either pick up a knockout, or get my shield back. Honestly, either one works pretty nicely for me, and I do get a defense drop from the crunch as well. This crunch is going to pick up the knockout onto Impoleon. In the back, it's HISUI and Electrode, so a very cool pick from my opponent. I'm going to be firing off the crunch. The crunch is going to be shielded. I get the defense drop as well, so the crunch defense drop's definitely coming through in this match. I send in the Shadow Froslass. They go for the Wild Charge. That is not enough to KO, and Shadow Froslass is going to be able to go for the 1 shield farm down here and take the win. Honestly, this Pokemon is just amazingly fun to run. We see a very tough lead in the next match as I lead Gastrodon into HISUI and Electrode. I'm going to save switch into the Shadow Drapion. Opponent is going to respond with the Toxicroak, and I'm firing off this Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail is going to connect. I farm up. Opponent is going to fire off the Mud Bomb here, and I decide to let this through. The Mud Bomb is going to pick up the KO, but this will allow me a nice opportunity to get farm on Gastrodon. Gastrodon isn't a big fan of going up against the HISUI and Electrode, but if I can make it to an Earth Power, and Earth Power will hit for some pretty nice neutral damage. And I make it to the Earth Power. This is going to hurt. Opponent is going to commit the shield, and now I have a tough decision to make. They do a nice job over farming. Do I decide to shield here and try and potentially go for the final shield? I decide to go for it and go for the Body Slam. At this point, I was worried about getting outpaced. If I tried to go for the Earth Power, they're able to withstand the damage. They have Drifblim in the back, and it looks like they have Mystical Fire. And with that, this game is over. Whether I no-shield the first or no-shield the second, either way, I just don't see a path to victory at this point, as I think what I had to do, in hindsight, was just not shield the Gastrodon. If I just saved shields for the Shadow Froslass, as I had in the previous games, I would have been in a much better spot, but being down energy, the Drifblim, just far too much to handle, and poor Gastrodon is just completely walled. It's just an absolute nightmare, and Drifblim is going to take that game. Speaking of tough matchups, I'm leading Gastrodon into the Gliscor, so I'm immediately save switching into the Shadow Drapion. In a bit of a surprise, the opponent ends up banking a ton of energy on the Gliscor before switching out. Gliscor's energy can be valuable later on, but their Lucario is now in an extremely difficult position, as it is so far behind in terms of energy. I'm farming up. My opponent looks like they may have lost track of the energy there. I make it to a third Aqua Tail, and rather than give up the final shield, instead, they're just giving up switch and going for energy on the Gliscor. Night Slash will hit the Shadow Froslass for super effective damage. I'm going to no-shield the first in case my opponent does get the boost. Thankfully, they do not. They're going for Night Slash number 2. I'm going to be committing the shield. These Powder Snows are going to be shredding through the Gliscor, and I'm firing off this Avalanche, looking to pick up the knockout. Of course, I still don't know what my opponent has in the back, and here it is. It's the Obamasnow. That's really not great for me. I'm farming up, going for the Avalanche. This will do some hard-hitting damage onto the Obamasnow. Obamasnow is going to commit the shield. It doesn't look like Obamasnow can farm down, which is good. I'm going to shield up the Weather Ball. The opponent is actually running Icy Wind, so I have some play here. I'm going to farm up and catch the Icy Wind onto the Gastrodon. Not only does that waste my opponent's energy, but that allows me to reset the debuff. So now I have a non-debuff Shadow Avalanche, so this game is over. I can fire off the Body Slam. Body Slam not going to be enough to knock out. Obamasnow is able to withstand that damage. Obamasnow firing off more energy here. They do go for another Icy Wind. I'm trying to make it to another move. I get farmed down, but Froslass is going to win charge attack priority. So my opponent did what they could after the Icy Wind catch, but the Icy Wind catch, thankfully, is enough to clinch the game. Bit of a tough lead in the next match. Gastrodon into Froslass. I'm going to save switch into my Shadow Drapion. Opponent staying in the matchup, so I may as well grab an early shield here with the crunch, as they cannot afford to get one-hit KO'd. They're firing off the Avalanche right away. That's perfectly fine. I'm more than happy to commit the shield here and continue to farm. I'm farming up energy. Opponent is going to now respond with a HISUI and Quillfish, so a very cool pick by the opponent. I'm going to fire off multiple Aqua Tails, but it looks like the Quillfish can actually tank these pretty decently. I do lose charge attack priority. They're going to be firing off an Aqua Tail of their own. That will not be enough to knock out. I will be able to withstand the damage and make it to another Aqua Tail. Here, in hindsight, I think I should have banked this move and then switched in the Gastrodon. Because if my opponent no shields, which they do, and bring in Froslass, energy advantage Froslass from my opponent is just such a problem to deal with. I'm forced to send in the Gastrodon, and Gastrodon, really not a fan of this matchup down energy either. The Avalanche is going to connect. Can I make it to the Earth Power? No, I cannot. I think my hope is I'm going to have to try and commit to an aggressive farm down with the Shadow Froslass and hope that I can one-shot whatever's in the back. They're firing off energy here. I think I have to try and call it. So I call it. It is just going to be the Avalanche. That does so much damage. So that does confirm to me that in the earlier match, when I went for the Shadow Ball in the mirror, I could have just gone for the Avalanche. I'm shielding up. I'm hoping it's something that I can one-shot in the back. And I saw a waterfall, so that's probably Impoleon. This is a Shadow Ball, though. Let's see how much damage this can do. Come on, Shadow Froslass. Please. Shadow Ball, massive damage, but the Impoleon is barely able to hang on. Great lead in the final match as I lead into a Shadow Drapion. Opponent save switches into Obamasnow. I'm going to immediately respond with my own Shadow Drapion. They are running Icy Wind, so they will get those guaranteed attack drops, but the pacing is a lot slower compared to Weather Ball. I'm able to get a defense drop. Honestly, in these sets, I was pretty lucky with the Crunch defense drops, which is a nice change of pace. The Crunch is going to pick up the knockout. Opponent is going to send in their own Drapion, and they're going to be able to withstand these debuffed Aqua Tails very comfortably as they get a massive energy head start. And that could be a little bit difficult to deal with. I'm firing off another Aqua Tail. My opponent is going to be no shielding here, as they know they can comfortably withstand the damage, and they're going to be firing off energy. It is going to be the Crunch. They do not get the debuff, and they have their own Froslass in the back. I think I just lose. Energy advantage Froslass, just too much to handle. And they're running triple axle as well. So they're just going to be going straight for the triple axles and just continuing to boost up attack. And since I was able to get a really good rank Shadow Froslass, I lose charge attack priority. I'm able to call the triple axle, but at this point I don't see a win con. My opponent can just keep boosting their attack more and more, and these powder snows are adding up so much. I'm going to be shielding, but I don't see a way to win this game, unfortunately. They go for yet another triple axle. I farm up, but wait. The opponent switches out. They try and catch a move, and in doing so, they reset the attack debuff, and they let me get a full farm down. And what looked completely unwinnable, there's suddenly a win con, as I'm able to make both avalanches here. The first one gets the shield, the second one picks up the knockout. I was close to conceding the match, but thankfully I did not, as the opponent did not see the win con, and I'm able to take that game. All in all, I did have so much fun getting to run the Shadow Froslass. This thing is absolutely unreal when it comes to just sweeping end games. If you get an energy lead or shield advantage, it is incredibly deadly. While the regular Froslass is of course a very strong pick, I think that we're going to see the Shadow have the same play, if not slightly better, just due to the fact that it has absolutely insane closing power. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated, so thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.